I'd like to go back over here on Lamed Beis Amid Beis, because I want to do some Tosas, which we didn't do. Thank you. There was an argument that says initially that if one wanted to cancel the agent he sent to get with, he would do it before Beis Din. Then Rav Gamliel, for the sake of Tikkun Olam, had legislated that that the agent has to be informed directly, or the woman has to be informed directly that the agency was canceled. Okay, that's the Mishnah. But initially, where would he have to make a statement that he's canceling the agent? Before a Beis Din. So there's an argument. What is a Beis Din? Before how many people does he have to? Does he cancel it? Does he annul the agency? Rav Nachman b'fnei Beis, Rav Shesham b'fnei Gimel. Rav Nachman says when Beis Din, the Mishnah says Beis Din, 2 people are sufficient. Rav Shesham says it has to be in the presence of 3. Rav Shesham b'fnei Gimel, Beis Din Ketoni, says in the Mishnah, Beis Din, what's a Beis Din normally? Conventionally, Beis Din is 3 individuals. Rav Nachman b'fnei Beis, the Beitrei Nami Beis Din Karilu. 2 people who also are referred to as Beis Din. Correct. So over here, Tosas points out we have a machlokas in Sanhedrin, the Beis Amid Beis. If you have a Beis Din of 2 individuals and they give a verdict, is it valid or not? It's a machlokas. It's a machlokas whether it is. Shmuel says it's valid. We ruled that it's not valid because it's called Beis Din Chotzu. It's considered an arrogant, brazen court. The question is that Rav Nachman over here says that Beis Din for this cancellation is 2, and that's sufficient. Is he following Shmuel's position that 2 is considered, or this is unrelated to that? Giving a verdict. I understand. It's a verdict, so good. I understand. So Tosas shows that even Rabbi Yochanan, who says that you have to have 3, who says 2 is sufficient, he argues with Shmuel. So you see, so he makes that differentiation. That over it's giving a psak, there's a psak Beis Din. So to give a ruling, a verdict, that you have to have 3. 2 is not a valid ruling. Here it's a question, annulling the get, canceling the agency, in the presence of how many do you have to have? Do you have to have 2, or do you have to have 3? It's a whole different discussion. No, it's a Beis Din. It's called, the classified as Beis Din. Because it's an official statement. Well, it's the same thing, same idea. We'll see. We'll see in a moment. Omer Rav Nachman no amidolo. Sorel says, where do I find that 2 are referred to as Beis Din? Detnan mosreini lefnechem plodi adayorim shemokom plodi. When a person writes the prusbul, there's the document that was enacted by Hillel Zoking that to protect the loan. So he writes this document, says, I present before you so-and-so the dayorim in such and such a location. So it only mentions ploni or ploni. It only mentions 2. So we see that 2 are referred to as a Beis Din. Rav Sheshes otu tona kiruchlo lechshe v'lezel. So Rav Sheshes' response is, the Tana, although it only mentions in terms of what is written in the document, it only mentions so-and-so and so and so-and-so, he doesn't fully, it's like etc. Is the Tana like a peddler where he has to go and flesh it all out totally? He doesn't. He's just giving you an idea of what has to be done. But he's not giving you the full form of what it has to be. So it's no proof. Okay. We're going to skip. We did this already. Neitikun olam. Because that's what I want to do, Tosas. Neitikun olam. Rabbi Gamliel, for the sake of the best interest of Klal Yisrael, of the Jewish people, he legislated that making the statement before the Beis Din, whether it's 2 or 3, is not sufficient, but you have to inform the agent or the woman that the get is not going to be a valid get because he canceled the agency. Right? That's the Mishnah. That's Rabbi Gamliel. Ma'ibnei Tikkun Olam. What exactly, what's the concern for the best interest of Klal Yisrael that the annulment before Beis Din is not sufficient? Rav Yochanan Omar b'nei takonos mamzerim. Because what happens? The husband cancels the get, annuls the get in presence of 2. We'll see in a moment. two people, and the woman's not aware of it. The woman receives the get, she marries, so what happens? When she marries, she's a married woman, because if the husband canceled the agency, it's not valid, correct? So if she remarries, the children are going to be mamzerim. So for the sake of klal yisrael, that there should not be mamzerim, he says that the cancellation should not be done before a bezdin, but rather the agent has to be informed that he's canceled, or the woman has to be informed before the agent comes that the agent who will deliver the get is no longer an agent. So she'll know not to remarry. She's still a married woman.
How would we ever have thought that canceling the shliach's already sent, deliver the get, I'm going to go to the court here, and how would we ever think that would invalidate the get?
Not invalidate the get. The cancel good. The man's not an agent. The man's not an agent any longer. As long as you go on record, I can't.
The shliach doesn't know, the agent doesn't know, he's going to deliver the get. Why would we ever think that would be okay?
Good. We'll see Tosas in a minute.
But in any case, the halacha is that the woman has to wait 3 months after the get is given.
Right.
to her.
Right. It's true. She'll end up with the get. The question is, what initially did they think? That's the question.
Yeah.
What did they think initially? Why was it even considered any value if he would make this statement in the presence of two witnesses, two dayanim, or whatever you want to call them? Why would that be sufficient? Because inevitably, a woman, even when she agrees to get, she realized there is such a possibility. So she will check. The question is that sufficient? I mean, how often?
So then why do you need to kind of
No. That was the question. That's the question. He felt it really wasn't sufficient. And because it wasn't sufficient, therefore we had the issue of mamzerin. Because if you have two, with the Gemara is going to say, the word never got back. See, if you have three, because it's public knowledge, it will get back to the woman. Okay? But if it's mamzer, it's two, it's not going to get back it's easily unless the woman goes and inquires. If the woman inquires, she'll find out about it. We'll discuss, that's what we're going to discuss in Tosas. Was we want the woman to be able to remarry. Meaning, ultimately, the Gemara is going to say the woman will know that the get was canceled, if it was canceled. But once the get is sent, we want, if the husband decided to divorce his wife, we want the husband, if he wants to cancel it, he has to go tell the agent directly. We want to make it difficult for him to cancel the agency. So as a result of that, when the woman receives the get, she should be able to remarry. Otherwise, what happens if she cancels it? Even though she's aware she's not going to be able to remarry. And we want to give her that ability to remarry if the marriage itself is in this state of the state where the marriage doesn't exist, basically. No, we'll see in a moment. They're arguing. Rabbi Yochanan b'nei Takaras mamzer b'sova l'Rav Nachman. Why couldn't Rabbi Yochanan is there an issue of mamzering, meaning the woman's fully unaware that the agency was canceled, and therefore she's a married woman remarrying, not being aware that the agency was canceled. So look, Rav Nachman dom ifnei shnayim, that he says that the annulment is sufficient in the presence of two, ubeitrei less lukolo, and when he makes the statement in presence of two, that kol, we'll see. There is, if she inquires, she can find out, but without that inquiry, it's not so simple. So therefore, word is not so easily can get back to her. So if there's no kol, v'hi lo shama v'lo yodo, she doesn't hear, she doesn't know. V'osla mitzvah, she'll go and remarry. V'ika mamzerim, so she's a married woman marrying. So the children can be mamzerim. As a result of that, that's the tikkun olam. Rabbi Gamliel legislated that the annulment is not valid. It's not a valid annulment. It has to be done. The agent himself or the woman herself has to be informed before she receives the get that the agency has been canceled.
But the mechanics is that the hefker can hefker on the document.
We didn't get to yet, because that's a separate argument. What happens if he canceled it in front of presence of two, and she received it, and she remarries? Is the annulment a valid annulment, or it's not a valid annulment? So that's a machlok for Rebbe and Shim Gamliel. Whether it is or not, that's a separate discussion.
There's got to be a mechanic about how to do this.
Well, we'll see. That's
He's
the
legislated, but how do they
What happens if the person did not adhere to the legislation and he canceled it? Is it canceled or not? Rabbi Shimon Gamliel says it's not canceled. So the Gemara asks the question: how could it not be canceled if he canceled it? Right? So that's where we get enough. That's where we end. Rebbe says it's canceled. The Chazal did not in any way intervene over here.
Which has more weight, two witnesses or best thing?
Here, in this context, 3 is better than 2. There's no question. 3 is considered more public knowledge than 2. 3 is public knowledge, whether you inquire or not, word is going to get back. 2, the information is available if you do your due diligence. Because that's one I want to show you the Gemara Bava Basra, because that's Tosafos' question. We find in Bava Basra, normally, undocumented loan you can't collect from lien properties if it's undocumented. A documented loan you could collect from lien properties. Because the word gets out, because if you have a sofer and you have witnesses, that causes that the information becomes public information. So before a person buys a property, he's aware that a loan was made. So and he purchases the property, despite the fact it's a lien. Okay, so there's no injustice to the buyer, because the buyer is buyer beware, and the information is there if you do your due diligence. But if it's undocumented, how's the buyer supposed to know? So he's a victim. Here you have the property liened. He's buying property. He doesn't even realize it's liened, and he's buying the property. Therefore, Chazal said that unless it's documented, the property is not liened. Even though on a Torah level it may be liened, rabbinically we don't let you collect from a liened property if the buyer has no basis or ability to even know that it's liened. It's documented, he has the ability. Undocumented, he does not have the ability. Right? That's the Gemara in Bava Basra, in some other locations. But
just through words, correct? But we need to.
we'll see. It's not simple. Well, not simple. There's a Tosafos, one pshat in Tosafos, which we'll see before. We're dealing with a Dov Sheberva. When you appointed that shliach, right? That's a Dov Sheberva. He has the ability to terminate the marriage because he's your agent. Therefore, Tosafos says, according to one pshat, that when you cancel the agent, you have to have minimally 2 witnesses. Because since in Dov Sheberva post mishnayim, the cancellation has to be done in the presence of 2. If it's the presence of 1, it's not even though the one witness would say he did cancel it, it's not sufficient. Because to undo a Dov Sheberva, you have to have 2 always.
I create an agent just through my words, right?
Okay.
And now you're saying you want to make cancellation someone more stringent.
Maybe you have to appoint the agent. What's the presence? How do we know you appointed the agent? How do we know he's your agent?
We've never really.
We never spoke about it. It's later. We're going to talk about this. The agent has to be appointed in the presence of 2 witnesses. Otherwise, how do we know he's the agent? Therefore, what? Doesn't mean he's an agent. What happens if you asked the sofer to write a get, and there were signatures, and now the sofer goes and takes the get? How did we know? He was the sofer. And he claims he's the agent. He can claim what he wants. And the husband counters. He says, I never appointed him for my agent. Only if you have witnesses, it could be verified. If you don't have witnesses, you can't verify it.
Now, can you designate the agent in the get?
You don't designate. It's not part of the text of the get.
But if you still do it so that it's no question?
And witnesses sign on this. Factually, that information that's called piksovim. Testimony has to be oral testimony. Written testimony doesn't mean anything. Okay, I just want to stick to what we're dealing with now. So according to Rabbi Yochanan, since the Gemara wants to say, since he follows the position of Rav Nachman that 2 witnesses, that Bezdin is 2, so therefore he's concerned about mamzerim. Wait a second. Rish Lokisham the takonas agunus. Saval Bereishis. Rav Shlokish says it's because we want the woman to be able to marry easily, and if the only way it could be canceled, the husband has to go out of his way, which is a tremendous inconvenience. It'll make it easier for the wife to be able to remarry when she gets the get. So if you have 3, there's a call. Word gets out, it becomes public. Like v'shama v'yoda v'lo mitzvah. So she will know not to get married if it's canceled, because if since the cancellation was done, presence of 3, word will get back to her. However, takonis agunas udika, but agunas there is. Factually, she knows about it, but she's stuck. She can't remarry because the husband already gave the get, changes his mind. Therefore, we want to make it difficult for the husband that he has to come in person to cancel it, to give her the opportunity to remarry. You only need 2.
If you have 3, would he say that you shouldn't have revealed?
We'll see. Tosa said the question is he should have legislated 3, right? What did they have to say? The cancellation is not a cancellation. He should have said cancel in presence of 3. That's Tosa's question. Tosa says because Rabbi Yochanan also agrees there is takonos agunos. The primary reason is mamzerim. So even if we add another dayan, we still have to contend with the issue of Reish Lakish, of agunos. So it's a combination of both. Okay?
The second reason adds what?
That even if you tack on another witness, you'll have 3, you still haven't resolved the issue. Because you still have takonos agunos. Initially, they held the primary reason is mamzerim. So before, Rabbi Gamliel said 2 was sufficient because a woman would do her due diligence and she would find out before she remarries. But evidently, they saw it wasn't working so well. So Rabbi Gamliel says, if that's the case, we're not going to rely on 2. So therefore, they say you cannot cancel unless you cancel it in person. So Tosa says, so why don't you add another person? Right? Make the cancellation, annul the agency in presence of 3. The answer is because you still have to contend with Reish Lakish's issue of takonos agunos, because we still want the woman to remarry. Take a look at second Tosa on the page, Lamed Gimel. Beitrei les lukolo, vim tomar, v'lisknu shivato b'fnei Gimel. According to Reish Lakish, Rabbi Yochanan, what do we say that the husband has to annul it in the presence of the agent, or the woman? Let them legislate. You have to have a 3rd person rather than 2. Because even Rabbi Yochanan agrees that there is this other issue of agunos. We don't want the woman to remain unmarried, and she has no choice but to remain that way. Okay, now the next Tosis. That's what I want to do. Very interesting. Obey plus islukolo. Says that if 3, there's a call. It becomes public knowledge. Vim tomar. The milva apelo gov mishabdi. An undocumented loan cannot collect from lien properties. See? Afilu hulveo b'fnei kamedim. Now that's the question. Hear this? Interesting question. Let's say a person has an undocumented loan. He lends the money in presence of 10 people. We're saying now, if you have 3 people, word definitely will get back to the woman. So if that's the case, if you lend money in the presence of more than 3 or more, you should be able to what? You should be able to collect from lien properties. As we say over here, there's no concern of mamzerim, because word will definitely get back to the woman that the agency was canceled. So if you have an undocumented loan, if it's done in the presence of 3 or more, you should be able to collect from lien properties. So what does that be, a documented loan? It has to be documented. The halacha is you can't, regardless of how many witnesses you lend the money in presence. Not a low plug. What's a low plug? Why should be a low plug? If you have 3 or more, you've created a setting.
The rule is we're not going to let you collect unless it's documented.
Why? Let's say we're not going to let you collect unless it's 3 or more. They should have made it that unless it's 3 or more, you can't collect. So 3 or more is the equivalent of having a document. It's like documented loan. I said, why not? That's Tosa's question. So, and the Gemara asked this. He's not saying why not. The Gemara explains why. So it says, Milva per, Avalav milva per logov mishabde afilu hulveo b'fnei kameidei. If you lend the money, even if you're in presence of many witnesses, you cannot collect from. Why? Hainu mishum. Alan, is important. Mishum demandu Yosef b'tzini Yosef. When a person borrows money, he always tries to keep it on the QT, quiet. He doesn't want, the borrower doesn't want to know that he's a debtor. Because if people know he's a debtor, that means they know he's under pressure. That means his assets, if they approach him, he doesn't have the upper hand in terms of getting the best price, because people know he's in need of money. So a person who borrows, and for other being credit-worthy, many reasons a person doesn't want it to become public knowledge that he's a debtor. So when a person borrows, as much as he have witnesses, he's always countering that coal. Word gets out, people say, is it true he borrowed? He says, no, it's not true. Because a person always tries to conceal that he borrowed, that he's a debtor. Okay? It's uncommon that a person who's a debtor, he should admit to others that he's a debtor. He doesn't want it to be known. And whoever asks him says, is it true that you owe money? He says, it's not true. People say it, but it's not true. I'm debt-free. Because again, he wants to be credit-worthy. But if everybody understands that somebody else has a first lien and second lien, that means you're going to wait in line to get your money. Nobody's going to want to lend the money. Therefore, he continuously denies that he borrowed. Okay? Therefore, regardless of how many people he borrows in front of, his denial would always counter that coal. So that will somehow stifle it. Here it says, if you have two, word doesn't get out. Interesting. The halacha is, and the Gemara asks the question, if a person, let's say, buys a field with a guarantee, right? I buy a field, and then somebody, after I buy the field, the seller had a creditor who takes the property from the buyer. What's the halacha? If there's a lien, he loses his money. He lost. So when he buys it with a guarantee from the seller. So you pay you pay more money to get a guarantee that if the field should be taken from the buyer due to the lien of the seller, he will be fully reimbursed the money that he paid for the field. Okay? Now, how's he supposed to know? How is he supposed to know that there's lien on the field? That the field that it's liened, right? So it says, "Mochsnei be'edim." A person sells a field in the presence of witnesses. Over there it says, the government chosm shabadim. And now the field is taken from him. The buyer doesn't have a deed. The buyer paid cash for the field. It was sold in the presence of witnesses. Two witnesses. We say, and now the seller has free properties. And now the creditor of the seller takes the field. He could go after properties of the seller, even though they were sold off, and collect. But it wasn't documented. So we say, as long as it was done in the presence of two, it's sufficient. Why? You hear the question. We're saying, if you lend money in the presence, regardless how many people, you cannot collect from lien properties, if it's undocumented. Of course, we say, because a debtor always denies that he borrowed. So he'll always continuously try to stifle the public knowledge, the word out there.
Two witnesses is not considered documentation.
No.
It has to be written documentation.
It has to be two witnesses signed on a document. Because you have the sofa, there's a whole setting. Okay? That creates the public knowledge, and that cannot be stifled. That remains intact, that information remains available.
Two people on the document.
With the sofa, the document had to be written also.
And three people without a document is still
Also not. Cannot.
even though the word gets out.
That's what he's explaining. Because the borrower always counters that information. No matter how many witnesses. Okay? Now he's asking, but what happens if I buy a field with achrayus, with a guarantee that if the field is taken from the buyer, he will be reimbursed. So he paid a premium. And the field is sold not with a deed, it's sold for cash. And it's sold in the presence of two witnesses. Two witnesses. And now the seller's creditor takes the field from the buyer. And this buyer and the seller had other properties. The buyer could go after those properties that were sold off and collect the value that he has the guarantee for. So the question is, but there were only two witnesses. Okay? That's what the Gemara contends with. So the Gemara says like this: before a person spends his money, he does his due diligence. The information is out there. Over there, nobody's trying to stifle the information that's out there. So regarding borrowing, as many witnesses who witness it, there's always somebody countering that information, trying to suppress that information, to bury that information. Here, nobody's trying to suppress or bury the information, correct? And a person, before he's going to purchase that property, he's going to do his due diligence because nobody's going to waste his money. So therefore, as a result of that, word's out there sufficiently that the person will be able to know that the property is liened to the buyer who bought the property with a guarantee from the seller. Okay? That's the Gemara Bava Basra. But in regard to what about the get? So we see that the information's there. If the woman would want to know, she could find out. So how? So that's Tosafos' the question. And what are we saying with two kolaleslu? That word is not out there. The woman, she wants to find out. She could find out. The question is she going to find out? Does she have the interest to find out? There's a principle. A man doesn't waste his money. Before you purchase something, you do your due diligence because you're not going to waste your money. But here the woman, the woman figures she got the get. I could get married. So she won't do the checking. Of course, the information, if she wants to check, she could find out. The information is there. But will she check? She won't. Therefore, that's where we have a problem with mamzerim. Wait a second. That's where we have a problem with mamzerim. So now we understand why, what was pre-takana. Initially, before Gamliel enacted that you have to cancel it directly in the presence of the agent, or the woman has to be told, because they said a woman, before she remarries, she's going to do her due diligence, because the information is out there. A woman, because it's of such serious nature, and there is this possibility the husband may have canceled the agent, she's going to do the check. Afterwards, they saw the woman didn't check properly. So now we have a problem. Mamzerim. As a result of that, he says, now the husband has to annul the agency, either in the presence of the agent or the presence of the woman before the get arrives. That's how Tosafos is explaining it. The Gemara says in Bava Basra, we have another minute, there was a time where the Gemara says, when you make a machor, if somebody occupies your property and the original owner makes a public protest that if the property is being occupied illegally, the owner of the one who occupies the property has to hold on to that document. Because since word will get to him that his rights are being contested to be there, the only reason why a person misplaces a document is because he becomes complacent, believing, why should he be so careful with the document? So as a result of complacency, he becomes careful, the document goes lost. So what happens now if the original owner comes and claims that contests his rights to be there? He has a problem if he doesn't have the documents. Chazal said that if a person occupies property for 3 years and there's no protest lodged by the original owner, the 3 years of silence is equivalent of having a document, of having the deed. That's what Chazal said. So therefore, the original owner, if he claims that the man's there illegally, he has to lodge a protest within 3 years. So word will get back to the occupant, knowing it's been contested. He's not going to be so complacent. He's going to hold on to that deed as proof that he either received it as a gift or he bought it. That's the Gemara Bava Basra. What happens if you have a situation of a Cold War where there's no continuous traffic going Yud and Goliel? There was a Cold War, and the property was in one location, and the owner was in the other location. The owner lodged the complaint, but word never got to the ears of the occupant, the one who occupies the property. Does the man have to still hold on to his deed? He still has to hold on to his deed, even though word never got to him. We'll continue tomorrow.